I'm all lit up and ready to go. Is my camera not working?
It's not shown up on the Discord yet. No.
Let me have a little look. Video. Video.
It's
Yeah,
trying. It's
that should work
trying.
now.
Hey, here he is. Here's the handsome fella. Firstly, chat. Before we start talking about it, can we just see the specimen that just flex for us, Dave? Come on, do the flexes.
My muscles will be off the screen. This isn't flexing. This is stretching.
Oh dear, Dave, you're not your body type isn't my type, but even I have to admire the pristine body here.
uh, you flatter me, sir. Well, interestingly enough, my not so pristine body was the reason I ended up out tonight. It's a long story, but
Syria in our chat is already sweating over you right now.
well, I've seen Syria on your stream and been in hers once or twice, and the appreciation of the hotness is mutual. Stop! You've been in a chat for like 5 minutes and you're flirting with everybody, Dave. Calm down. In fact, I'll probably that's why I have this emoji. Let's see if it's going to work. This one that says thirsty but worthy.
Oh, I love it. And Syria responds with her unihorn.
Love it.
So I think, to be quite honest, this is the way that we went by our conversation in Twitch card. To be quite honest, just flirting with everyone on the table, didn't we?
Essentially something like that. Yeah. Before you go, okay, I'm hot.
One last time, Dave is a cyborg.
Yeah. What happens in Dam stays in Dam.
That's exactly what happened at TwitchCon. Like, without any alterations to the truth whatsoever. Apologies for being late. As I say, it's a slightly long story. It's not that long really. We're going on holiday on Friday, and it's a cruise that was booked for like forever ago. And forever ago, I fit into my suits, and you need to wear, you need to dress up for a few nights on a cruise and stuff. And I don't fit into any of them anymore, except for the one I wore for my sister's wedding, which is just the same jacket that it's really, really fancy. And so my wife was like, look, we need to go to Cheshire Oaks and you need to get a suit tonight, otherwise I'm going to be stressing about it all week. And I was like, I reluctantly agreed, because I don't know if you know what Cheshire Oaks is, or if you have one. It's an outlet place, and it steals my soul. But I reluctantly agreed. And the thing is, I never book things in for the evening, so this is actually in my calendar.
Yeah.
Which is the worst thing about it is, and then I went, I put this in my calendar, but because I never book things in the evening, I didn't look at my calendar.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry. It's all on me. It's all my fault. I should have been like, no, I cannot buy a suit tonight. I have a pre-arranged arrangement. And yeah, I was like, yeah, tonight's the only time I can do it before Friday. Clearly, no, I was wrong.
Well, there's two things. There's two things I can say to that. Firstly, I've not heard of Cheshire Oaks, because I'm guessing it's in, I don't know, Cheshire.
Yes.
So I've never been there. And secondly, look, even if this was the first thing booked, I am never going to be in a fight with your wife over your attention and anything like that. So you saying yes to your wife is the safest thing for you.
Yeah, she's pretty terrifying. But the other thing was, when I came into your stream to be deeply apologetic, you were sat there talking about ramen, and I'd just had ramen. So and we were we'd been in the car about 5 minutes, and I was like, right, because for once she was driving, which normally I do most of the driving. So it was because of that I was like, right, I must keep up with my correspondence. And I saw your message, and I was like,
yeah,
because you've been around me in my community enough now to know I do not like letting people down. I know that it's acceptable. I know that it's understandable. I know that when you have a lot of balls in the air, some balls get dropped, but I still I'm very forgiving of myself for anything that involves me. But if I don't, I'm still not 100% there when of being forgiven for myself when it involves other people. So my deepest and most heartfelt apologies, sir.
And yet you also know that if someone let you down, you would deeply forgive them, because everyone has a life outside of it, yeah?
Yeah, but then it's funny because in work today, I spent half the day really banging home examples of how to speak to yourself like you would a friend, and it does come back to that, is that that's something I need to remind myself though. And I think, you know what, this will probably be like the first kind of super relatable thing that I'll say today, which is the fact that when you come from a background of trauma and stuff, when you come from a background of kind of being the scapegoat, or from people being pissed off at you and you never really knowing why they were 100% of the time, it does turn you into an overly apologetic adult and it's another thing that I try and get my community to do. And Val and Vane, who was on my stream a few weeks back, he says the same thing, is that instead of apologies are banned. Instead of apologizing, say thank you. So say thank you for being patient. So I will actually take a page out of that book and say thank you for allowing me to come on at the slightly later time of 9:30, and for being so flexible and accommodating for me, because I actually know that flexibility and when plans change isn't the easiest thing in the world for many autistic people. So I doubly appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you. Still being able to change your schedule, even if because it's the same for you as well. There's a lot of people that would go, literally 8:30 was the only time I could do it. I'm sorry, I can't do. I can't be available for the interview. So the same goes the other way. Now I was going to do an introduction, but since you mentioned ramen, I think the first question I interview you on is on a question that one of my mods actually asked for, which was why we were talking about ramen in the first place. So if you have a takeaway ramen, or if it's curry or anything like that, and the containers are plastic, do you reuse them?
I have been known to. Yeah, I have done in the past.
Yeah, that's.
Isn't that are they full of BPA or something, and they're going to give me cancer?
I think it was just this general. So I think it was like relatable. Literally, this mod was like going, "I've got some nice takeout containers, and I want to reuse them." Is that weird? So you validated the mod by those comments, so that's fine.
I have done, yeah, I wouldn't say I do it exclusively every single time. And we used to get like Chinese from the village, because like we live in like the sticks in the middle of nowhere, and there's hardly anything that around here. It's got better recently, but the only local place was a Chinese. Well, in fact, the curry house down the road is a great curry house, but it was always the metal dishes with the paper lid. And the Chinese place that's down the road from there always did plastic ones, so we did reuse some of those. But it was one of those things that, like, if anyone's ever bought those, is it goo, like the goo desserts that come in a glass ramekin? Yeah, they're delightful, aren't they? And the first two you get, you're like, oh, I'm going to keep these glass ramekins and use them again. And then you get 4 of them, and then you end up with like 600 of them at some point. It's like I've just got an entire cupboard full of ramekins. And once upon a time, I will, if I've got a guest over and I'm feeling fancy, I'll put some mayonnaise in there for their chips, But it's like, no, it's I have done, but I didn't say I always do. Is my answer.
I think this is a thing, isn't it? That if you get too far, you can end up being considered weird, even though it's actually really cool to other collectors. I always remember I went round. So there was this guy's house I saw, and he literally collected these glass bottles from the 60s onwards and everything like that. And there were some people that were like going, "That's a really weird habit," and I'm like going, "That's a really cool house."
I like like the glass bottles and stuff where the like the Coke and Pepsi ones where the logo was beveled into the glass and stuff like that.
Yes.
Like, I love that retro stuff. So yeah, no, I'm with you on this one.
Brilliant. So we've already gone off the rails of the theme of the interview before we even started.
Well, we're both neurodivergent.
Yeah.
That's gonna happen.
That's true. That's true. Thank.
I mean, you like, tell it. Well, do you want to give everyone the context of how we met and how that was like a 20-minute conversation that lasted for 4 hours, or,
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is, even you don't know the full story, which I'll mention right at the end because it's even funnier. So, me and Dave met through, there was a Just Chatting meetup at TwitchCon. I think it was pretty much from the very start. And we're very passionate about two different things. Obviously, you guys know in terms of my autism. I have to use awareness because that's what everyone knows, but it's not. That's just how it is.
Autism celebration.
And Dave is very passionate when it comes to mental health and the well, I'll let Dave explain it when we go into the questions. But we were talking for so long that TwitchCon was closing by the time. Well, we were still in our conversation by the time TwitchCon was closing, and they were actually packing up shit. And so
literally sweeping under our feet.
Yes, and so I think it was like the only time I'd ever been like done like an extrovert thing and done an offer. I was like going, should we take this to like a bar? And I think it was you, Helena Cake, and I don't know who was with Helena.
Axel,
that was it. And yeah, so we just carried on, and even though it was the four of us, the only two that were chatting were me and Dave, and I think the other two were just listening in. So I know that very much in the same way for you, Dave, that when you were interviewing me, you were gonna, it was gonna be quite a relaxing one for you because of the way it is. Even though this is my first time I've ever interviewed someone, I just know it's gonna go smoothly. I think. But yeah, to give a little bit of an introduction, so Dave and Blue, thank you for the shout out. Dave does a lot of mental health streams during the afternoon BST. He also does interviews. He mentioned Val and Vane, where they did a sex education interview. Wasn't available for pure filth, basically. And just recently, I can't remember who it was with, but you did the accessibility interview.
That was with a special effect.
Yes, that was it. Which, by the way, is probably one of my favourite ever things that I've ever seen, where I got reminded of, because I think it was Everton Football Club, they had that sort of accessibility robot as one of the mascots at a match in a few years back for a child that was on oxygen, but he could still be one of the mascots at the football ground, which was always a good reminder. And as someone that suffers with epilepsy, I very much am very behind accessibility when it comes to when it comes to video games, because of the flashing lights and the flickering effects that is normal in games and they don't seem to do anything about it. So absolutely adored it.
Warning on the beginning for you.
Yeah, but then they don't.
Basically says, "Hi, if you're epileptic,
you're screwed."
Play this game.
Yeah.
We're putting this out there to make it look like we're putting it out there for you, but really it's just to like protect our asses.
It's so bad, isn't it? Yeah. So yeah, but going back to it, those are the interviews that Dave does. So we're playing the Uno reverse card, and we're saying, let's interview Dave. Yeah.
Hopefully Dave loves to talk.
So Dave, the first question for you is pretty much almost the TwitchCon question when it comes to mental health. So I know that in this very similar way that I view autism and autistic, the appreciation and everything like that differently to how the rest of the world views it. How is it when it comes to mental health? Do you view things differently to the rest of the world?
First of all, I think we're a bunch of badasses. I literally posted this on Twitter last night, and I thought I'm going to get in trouble from the LGBTQ community for this, because I may have tried to co-opt Pride for a second, but I basically said that the LGBTQ community have got it right. They don't call it non-straight relationship awareness month; they call it Pride, and the disabled community have taken that on as well and call it disability Pride. And I'm like, so I think that next time Mental Health Awareness Month rolls around, we should call it Warriors Month. I think that's, because it's like everybody knows what Pride is. Pride's all those really awesome gay people just living their life and just, being amazing. And so I want the recognition, not for me. Wow, that came out wrong. I'm just literally Freudian slip, Clearly,
You're already a celebrity.
Let's just rewind. I want all the recognition, right? What I want, how I view it differently is the expression. I suppose it's best summed up in a phrase that I use a lot, which is "You are not weak. The journey is just difficult." So that's how I view it. I view people who struggle with their mental health as people who are playing life on hard mode. I view it, and as a result, and the thing is, they're playing life on hard mode, and everyone else gives them acts as if they're playing life on easy mode and don't understand why it's difficult for them. And I want people with mental health to realize that, okay, the accomplishments we have are all relative to where our mental health is that day. So, today I went to work and did a full day of work, went out and did, the shopping and stuff, and came back and did this. I'm a little bit tired. But it's like, that's a good solid day for me. Now, can I do that? Can I do days like that 5 days of the week, 52 weeks of the week? No, I can't. I used to. I tried. I did the masking thing. I did all that. I tried to work at the capacity of everybody else. For those of you who are wondering, my neurodivergence is ADHD, so I work best in sprints. I work best in sprints with deadlines. I don't work well in dripping things out. I don't work well in I can basically, if I get to Friday afternoon and I've not done my work for the week, that's not a problem for me. I'll do my work for the week on Friday afternoon, and that was often frowned upon in the business world, because they were like, oh, well, if you can do that on Friday afternoon, then you can surely do 10 times that amount during the course of the week. It's like, no, I could slow down and act like one of your regular employees and do that same amount of work over the course of the week, and you'd think I was okay. Or I can do that exact same amount of work in a Friday afternoon and whatever. So yeah, the fact that I've done all of that today, and I've got another day like that on Wednesday this week, it's like I'm doing full days of training with the NHS. Yeah, this is going to be a difficult week for me. And now old me, how I view mental health differently is old me would have been like, oh, come on, everybody works full days and all the rest of it. It's like, that's the expected, just suck it up, all the rest of that. That'd be old me, like with the stigma and all of that stuff, because I, like a lot of people with ableism, it becomes internalized even if you're the one who's struggling. But new me is like, you know what? That if tomorrow comes round and I can't get out of bed, and all I manage to do tomorrow is get out of bed, or all I manage to do tomorrow is brush my teeth, I will know that that's because I'm not brushing my teeth on easy mode. I'm brushing my teeth on ultra extreme difficulty, hell mode, whatever, and I will treat that as big as an accomplishment as what I've achieved today. And that's what I want the rest of the mental health world to understand, is the fact that I call it your adaptive best. People are like, there's that expression, don't compare yourself to anybody else, just compare yourself to who you were yesterday. That's fantastic to anyone who's on the way up. It's really shit to anyone who's on the way down, because if you compare yourself to who you were yesterday and you're in a worse position than you were yesterday, it's not very good. What I say is, don't compare unless it's fair. Basically every single day, what's the best you can do that day? And let's work with that. And funnily enough, sometimes if a person does that and they set the bar lower, it's almost the opposite of that whole aim for the moon and you'll land on the star, or aim for the stars and you'll land on the moon thing. It's like, actually, if you aim for here and that's achievable, that can give you the momentum to actually make it to here. So yeah, that's how I view mental health differently, I think.
No, it's a good start, and I think it was interesting. One of the things that I remember you mentioning on TwitchCon, but you'll probably just not correct it, but just perhaps make it so that it came out of your mouth rather than mine, is the fact that when it came to the term mental health, and I seem to remember you mentioning that mental health, just mentioning those words, people automatically think negative. And the fact that actually And very much that thing of the warrior thing and everything like that. That mental health is actually, it is a positive as well. You can actually be going, yes, I am going to improve my mental health and make myself better. That is also mental health. It's all about improving things, and that thing of dealing through life as well. It's that thing of these are people that have been able to show their mental strength. In very much the same way when it comes to a video game. Everyone knows me that I am the one that plays easy on video games. I've not been able to.
Why not?
Yeah, why not? I want to enjoy it, but
They're
because
games
exactly,
are enjoyment.
Exactly. But here's the thing, isn't it? Is the fact that I'm not here to show my skill set in a video game. I'm here to enjoy the video game, and that's why I have it on easy mode. In the same way that those people that have their life on easy mode haven't yet been able to show their mental health strength because they've not been in a situation where their mental health strength has been tested in a sense.
Precisely.
And I do remember I think that was what the start of our really 3-hour, 4-hour long conversation was all about at TwitchCon. You sort of delved into it a little bit, but when you interviewed me and it came to my autism awareness and celebration, everything like that. You sort of asked in terms of my mental journey, my journey with autism. So both personally but also professionally, because obviously I know you're on the NHS for it. What's been your journey when it's come to mental health? Yeah, you knew it was coming.
So we'll go. We'll do this in sort of 2 stages. We'll do the before and after, and the before and after are of something that happened 13 years ago. Before is everything that happened in my life leading up to that point, which is ultimately I come from a broken home, and I was raised by my mum and my nan, mainly by my nan, because my mum had to go out to work to keep a roof over her head. My dad had basically buggered off with another woman, and didn't really want that much to do with me. I had an older brother, and then I ended up with 2 younger sisters, and my dad seemed to want something to do with all of them but me. So originally I thought it was just like, oh well, I'm mum's favourite, Lee's dad's favourite, whatever. But then when my sisters came along, and I'm like, oh, I was okay being second, being fourth's not so fun. But so I yeah, I was brought up primarily mostly female influence, which I love. To be perfectly honest, I love the fact that happened. Not in the way it happened, but I love the fact that my masculinity is not toxic masculinity. I have bucket loads of femininity to go in with there, and I actually think of that as a strength. I think of that as great. But the problem was with that household, with that being it the way it was. My mum was building this business, and I wasn't much kind of hands-on with the parenting side of things. But I was, I'm in ADHD. Of course I was. I was a gifted child. So I was really good and self-sufficient in school until it got too hard. But the problem was, by the time it got too hard, it was like, oh, you can't ask anybody for help. You're the gifted one. So I wanted to keep that up because all of my self-esteem was wrapped up in being smart. So when things were too difficult, I never asked for help. But yeah, so I was bullied horrendously for being smart. I love the fact that the full circle of this story starts at me being bullied for putting my hand up in class and answering questions, and I'll tell you where the full circle ends when we come to the end. Little teaser. I'm doing it well today. And I was bullied in school because of that, and because of being bullied in school, my way of dealing with it, I told my dad about it, and my dad was like, how can you possibly be getting bullied? Look at the size of you. I was most of the size that I am now. And I was like, great, this is it. So I developed an eating disorder at 12, and then at 14, I went to the doctors all by myself because I didn't want to burden either of my parents with it or my grandma with it. So I went to the doctors at the age of 14 and was diagnosed with bipolar disorder in what I am told is a very, very hasty and a little bit questionable decision. I've since had the diagnosis reconfirmed by 2 doctors and denied by a 3rd doctor. So I might have bipolar disorder. I've lived my entire life like it. I've been on medication for it a load of times. My entire identity's been wrapped up in it, but sure, I might not. But
At worst, you're 3/4. If 3 have said yes and 1 has said no,
yeah. Well, I mean, the one that said no was just like, I'm not sure you should be on these antidepressants. You've got bipolar. No, that was the one that said yeah. He's like, why did you get put on antidepressants when you got bipolar disorder? You should be on mood stabilizers. Here you go. But basically, yeah. So that was at 4. So that was 14. So yeah, eating disorder, horrendously bullied, bipolar disorder, and bipolar disorder. By the way, I know I don't look it. Thank you, person in chat, for saying that. I don't look 40. I know. But this was, this was 1996. So the knowledge of bipolar disorder that was going around at that point was, you're either really, really up or you're really, really down, and nothing in between it even exists for you. And the weird thing is, if you tell people that, that becomes your reality. So I never noticed the normal days. I just noticed the days that I was hyper as anything, or the days that I was depressed as anything. So that was, and then all that led up to essentially, well, if you imagine all of that, basically led to severe amounts of low self-esteem, lots of daddy issues, lots of trying to make up for that low self-esteem. The eating disorder didn't quite scratch my itch by the time I was in my late teens, so I turned to alcohol. The alcohol didn't scratch the itch by the time I was in my mid-20s, so I turned to drugs. The drugs didn't scratch my itch by the time I was in my latest 20s, 2009. When would that be? How old was I then? 27. So yeah, my sort of mid to late 20s. So I turned to self-harm, and then the self-harm didn't scratch the itch. So in 2009, I made an attempt on my own life. And that is the before. That's the before. Now, I failed, and I'm glad I failed. I've never been so glad I failed of anything in my entire life. However, I wasn't glad I failed at that moment. I was like, can't even get this right. And thinking of like, you know what? Here's the important part: is I believed I had nothing left to give. I believed that no one loved me. I believed that I had 2 kids from my first marriage, and I believed that I was pathetic and they deserved anyone but me. Like, I genuinely didn't just think that they'd be better off without me. I believed they would be better off without me, because then their mum could marry somebody else and he'd then be their dad, and the best thing I could do is get off the face of this planet and make room for them. And I've totally believed that. And I had my life saved by a movie. A movie called The Diving Bell and the Butterfly, which is a true story of I think it's Jean Bobby, the French director of Elle magazine, and he got in a car accident, and then when he woke up, he had locked-in syndrome. He could only move his eyes, couldn't move any part of his body, couldn't light at all, couldn't interact in any way other than by using his eyes. And an amazing nurse, and I always love people like this that make that bridge, that gap. This guy can only blink, and this nurse figured out, yeah, but he can blink in code, and we can teach him to write the alphabet by the amount of blinks he does, and then if we're patient enough, we can sit with him, and we can write a book. I've got so much respect for that, because the same way as I have so much respect now for someone who makes the effort to communicate with a non-verbal child, an autistic child is non-verbal. That doesn't mean that they can't communicate. It just means they communicate the way that you expect them to. So I've got so much respect for like this nurse as well. And they wrote this book together called The Diving Bell and the Butterfly. And there's a scene in it called Father's Day, and he's on the beach. He's strapped up to the wheelchair. They weren't even supposed to let him go out there. They weren't, because he could have died from an infection or whatever, but he's in the wheelchair. He's got the tubes for the ventilator. He's got the wires checked, checking on all his vitals and everything. And all he can do is watch his kids. And I was sat there watching it, and weirdly, I was just like, well, I mean, at least I'm not him. Like, that kind of crept in a little bit, and I was like feeling a little bit guilty, for, like, watching him, thinking this guy still wants to be around his kids, even though this is what he's got to offer. And I'm like thinking like this, and then this line in the film that just hit me like a ton of bricks, which was he basically said, I realized that even a shadow, even a fragment of a dad is still a dad. And I just paused the film and just sat there bawling my eyes out. And I was just like overwhelmed by this. And then this one little light bulb moment came on in my head, which was, it said, you know what? Maybe I could be that for my kids. Maybe I could be that man for my kids. And that was the kind of transition. And then the after that was, I set about working on my mental health. I set about working on my physical health. I rekindled old friendships and started talking to people more openly about what was going on. I went back to therapy. I re-engaged with my doctors. I did everything. I went all in. Now, originally, it was to be the best dad I could possibly be for my kids. And then along the way, it became being the best coach I could be for my clients when I was a personal trainer, being the best boyfriend and then husband I could be for my second wife. And then eventually, along that way, I finally figured out it was about being the best man I could possibly be for me, because actually putting yourself first is not selfish. Looking at like being who you are just for yourself is not selfish in the slightest. And yeah, one of my friends, who the friend who actually took me back to the hospital and looked after me after my attempt, like once a few years before that, he turned around to me and said, "You're going to be a motivational speaker one day." And I was like, "Bullshit! Why would anybody listen to me? Like, what have I got to say?" And the thing was that I started a few years after that just sharing my own personal journey, whilst I was working as a personal trainer. I was just helping people with their physical health. I wasn't just helping people with their physical health, it was helping them with their stress levels and stuff as well. And some of them were like, "Oh, my anxiety's better while I'm doing this, or my depression's better while I was doing this." And I found that so much more satisfying than them just being able to go, "I can bench press better than I could before," you know? And I
Yeah.
was just like, and I was doing this course on coaching techniques, and basically it was a life coaching qualification. It wasn't packaged as a life coaching qualification because I don't think I'd have ever gone for it if it had been. It was just coaching techniques for nutritionists. I was training to be a nutritionist, and they were like, "Right, while you're doing this nutritionist course, we want you to do these coaching modules as well, because it's not just about like knowing what to say to a person, it's knowing how to get them to stick to the plans and how to get them to change their habits and all the rest of it." And for the first time since being bullied in school for knowing all the answers to questions, I was back in a sort of environment where I knew the answers to questions again. And it turned out that I had this weird it's not natural actually, it's called years of trauma and therapy. But I had this knack for this course, and we all had to do practical stuff in this course. So I was having breakthroughs with the other students in the room, and the students started requesting me for the demos. And unlike in high school where I'd got picked on for knowing the answers to class, here I was heralded as some sort of god. Now I hadn't fixed my daddy issues at this point, so my ego was prime for this. I was like, "Oh, I like it," and I may have milked it a little bit too much, maybe. um Honesty is the best policy.
Mm.
I hadn't fixed my self-esteem at this point, so everybody in the class wanting me to do the demonstrations for them because I was like, literally helping them with breakthroughs. And I went and spoke to the guy who owned the gym I was working at, and I was supposed to give a nutrition seminar 2 weeks later, and we'd already sold all the tickets. And I was like, "Would it be okay if I give a mindset seminar instead?" And he's like, "As long as you kind of like let everybody know and you don't get anybody say, no, we've signed up for nutrition or whatever." And everybody because it was free. So I say sold the tickets. We basically allocated all the tickets, and everyone was just like, "No, that sounds really good." Um, no one complained about it whatsoever, and we had the gym in the studio in our gym with like 50 chairs in it, all of them full, standing room at the back, like everything full. And I presented as for about 2 hours in straight, maybe with like 10-minute break in the middle, as if it was the most natural thing in the whole world, as if I'd done it a million times before. And I kind of just stood there at the end of it, and I was like, "This is what I want to do forever." Like, and I've just done 5 hours of that today, and I still love it. Like, I'm getting emotional thinking of it right now. I got to stand in front of a group of trained psychologists today,
Wow.
and basically train them from my lived experience. and they loved it. And the comments that I've got back, they're all people who work within the NHS. It's like, I went in there and I said to them, look, I'm used to training teachers that don't have much psychological training, and I know that all of you have got like degrees or even masters in psychology, so I've got a little bit of imposter syndrome going on today, but this stuff is never meant to supplant what you're actually teaching. It's just supposed to be another perspective on all of this. And I've honestly, the feedback I've got from today was just phenomenal. But over that time, from that first talk, which was 7 years ago maybe, to today, the guy who had nothing else to give, who 100% believed he has nothing left to give, I did over 1,000 one-to-ones for free between 2018 and 2020 with a project called A Life a Day. I have helped over 100 people with eating disorders. I have worked with personal trainers to look at the mindset and habit change part for their clients. I have helped reach, I believe it currently stands at 60,000 young people, 11 to 29-year-olds, through a project called Change Talks, which I was very lucky. I got involved in that project by sliding into he was now in my boss's DMs. It was quite funny. I've won an award from the former Prime Minister, the now former Prime Minister Boris Johnson.
I was about to ask which one. There's about 20 of them in the past 3 years.
So I've won an award from good old Bojo for a show called the Mental Health Family Hour, which we created and put out to about 40,000 families we put it out through YouTube, so it's however many people ended up accessing it, I guess. But we put it out for families to help bridge the gap between what kids understand about mental health and what adults understand about mental health. And for the last 2 and a bit years, I've run what is arguably quite a successful peer support network through Twitch, where we have a community, where I say, people like say, oh, streamers, successful streamers, like, 100 viewers or 1,000 viewers or whatever. And mine's like, we get like 20, 30, sometimes 40. But as far as I'm concerned, when I ran a face-to-face peer support network, when we had 12 people in that room, that was a busy day. So if we have 20 people in a stream, that's bigger than that. It's like, it's bigger than what I was doing in the real world. And yet people looked at the real world thing as being more important. So that's I never had anything more to give. And the full circle thing that I said before is that at the beginning of this, I was bullied for standing up in front of class and knowing the answers to questions. And now I stand up in front of classes of kids and give them the answers to questions about their mental health. I think that's a pretty good symmetry.
Absolutely. That's always pretty cool to happen. One of the things that I think you might have...
I told you it was a long answer.
Yeah. Well, that's the beauty of these interviews. So one of the things that I know was mentioned, I think, that weekend of the TwitchCon, which you haven't mentioned yet, because you mentioned some awards you got, but there's one award you missed out.
Oh, I can't remember. This one, you mean?
Was it the one from Mind? Was it or
Mental Health Blog Awards?
Yes, that was it. And I think what was it? You had to listen into it whilst you were at TwitchCon, didn't you?
Oh, this was so funny. So yeah, I thought it was at 7 p.m. So my plan was to go to TwitchCon, enjoy the first day. And then maybe get a couple of beers, take them back to my room and sit in my room, or even maybe sit in a bar somewhere and watch the Mental Health Blog Awards with my headphones, peacefully. And then I looked at the time for it and it was like 2 p.m. And I was like, oh, I really should watch this because I was up for 3 awards. And so I thought I really should watch this because I think I was up for 3 awards last year as well, but I didn't win any last year. And this year I was up for 3 again. And I was like, right, well, I feel like I've got a strong chance to win it. And well, I thought I had a strong chance of winning one of them at least. And so I thought I'll watch it. And also the best thing for me, and the reason I go to like those meetups and stuff, is I believe in a big thing called collaboration, not competition. So there's plenty of other mental health streamers on Twitch, and I want to work with all of them, and I want to hang out with all of them. And
I want you all. I want you all.
I want to. They're my Pokemon. I want to catch them all.
Any shinies?
No, well, actually, there was one called Shiny, but she's not streaming at the minute. But basically, so I'm sat there in TwitchCon, and at first I thought, well, it's okay because I'll just mill about somewhere quiet and listen. And then it was like, yeah, but I want to go and see that talk on like engagement, like engaging plugins and stuff for. But before I did that, I went outside where the music stage was and where the craft beer tent was and stuff. And I thought, I'll get myself a beer first. And as I went out there, this is the most embarrassing thing. I had my headphones on like this, and my phone was in my pocket. And it must have been facing my leg. So you know how sometimes like the heat of your leg can press buttons on your phone
Yes.
if it's facing the wrong way. I unmuted myself. And all I hear in the headphones is like, it sounds like the announcer, whilst someone else is giving a talk, the announcer going, it sounds like someone else has just unmuted themselves there. Is there something that you want to say? And I'm just like, oh, I'm like, what idiot's done that? And he goes, and they're like, Dave. And I was like, no, so that was the worst bit, and I was just like, I immediately pulled it out of my pocket, remuted it, and then it was like in the chat box, like, I'm so sorry, like I'm at a conference, and then that was like they had a bunch of talks first, and then they had the award ceremony. And so I go into this engagement talk at TwitchCon whilst this is happening, and they start announcing the winners. And one of my friends won an award, and I let out a little yes, like physically in the room. Now, bear in mind that everybody in this room is watching a very different presentation to me. They're watching two people give live demonstration about like these kind of tools that you can use for engagement. And then this random guy in the second row, I didn't even have the decency to stay at the back of the room and stay out here. I'm right up there, second row. This random, like, he's like, yeah, letting out like a little thing. And then, like, 2 awards later, it's like, and for Creative of the Year, the award goes to Mindset by Dave. And I was like, yes! Like then immediately kind of like covering my mouth, and I was just like, and everyone in the room's just like, who is this weirdo? And like, oh, you know what? I've had like mental health episodes in public before now. I've been looked at for worse than that. But it was so funny, and they were like, "Do you want?" They're like, "Oh, Dave's in the chat. Would you like to come on and like say a few words about the award?" And I was just like, "I really would." But you've not got enough time. But I was like, I really would, but I'm at a conference, and so I was at 2 conferences at the same time, and it was a lot to deal with.
It could have been worse. It could have been worse. It could have been that you were like in a one about moderation, and they were just starting to talk about trolls that bully chat, and at that point, that's when you go, yes, yes for the trolls.
Yeah, that's true. It could have been a whole lot worse.
Yes.
But yeah, I'm like, I will not never have events, but like I mean, I was and ahhing about TwitchCon forever. And the trip I'm going on Friday was originally over TwitchCon. And it got cancelled because the boat or something had a problem. And it got postponed until now. And I remember saying to my community when the TwitchCon dates got announced, I said I was going to go to one or the other of them this year. And there was a trip booked when and then when the dates got announced, that was when this trip that trip that I'm going on now was originally. And the second one, we're away for my mum's 70th. So I was like, oh no, like I can't go to TwitchCon, and I really wanted to. But in reality, you said you had a bit of an extrovert moment, and people don't believe this about me because I'm very flamboyant. I'm an introvert, and that was TwitchCon was a stressful and a difficult experience for me. Way more difficult than standing in front of the 40 psychologists that I did today and talking about mental health. That was easy. That's like that was nothing. But my my introvertedness finds it hard to go and introduce myself to people. But if someone says, "Here's Dave, he's going to talk to you for 4 hours," I'm good at that. But if I have to go up and go, "Hi, I'm Dave. Tell me about you," or "Can I tell you about me?" or "What do we do? How do we do this?"
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Which is why the meetups around specific topics. So there was a podcast one on the Saturday, which is where I met Valen. And then there was the Just Chatting streamers one on the Sunday. So I thought, well, these, at least I know that every single person in that room will have a Just Chatting stream, and we'll have that in common. As it turned out, as you well know, a few people in that room were like, "Oh, I don't stream," or like, "I don't have a Just Chatting stream. I just wanted to come and meet some Just Chatting streamers." It's like, "Oh, okay, cool." There goes my theory out the window.
Yeah.
But yeah, being introverted and stuff, Twitch con was difficult. So when the holiday got cancelled, everyone was like, "Oh, well, if your holiday got postponed, that means you can go to TwitchCon now." And I was like, "Yes, it does, doesn't it? Let me
It
get
means
back to
I
you on."
can, yes.
Yeah. So yeah, I was suddenly like, damn it. I was like saying that the only reason I couldn't go to TwitchCon was because I was on holiday. And now that I'm not on holiday, I can go to TwitchCon. And now I'm not sure I want to. And then I was looking for like a safety blanket in my community. You know, I was looking for somebody to go with. However, and I did know Helena before, and I like Helena's like a sort of occasional member of my community, and so I knew I was going to meet her briefly while I was over there, but she wasn't one of like the super tight members of my community that I talk to all the time. But in a weird way, I was kind of glad, because I would have used that safety blanket. And like, there's another mental health streamer called Up for the Challenge, and he makes me look like I don't talk much.
Wow.
He's also autistic as well, by the way. So if you're looking for other autistic streamers, and particularly mental health streamers, and you know, he's the particular kind of brand of autism of to the point, very to the point. So whereas I meander around topics for long periods of time, he's very blunt in a lot of ways. So as a result, out of the two of us, he comes across as the more domineering personality, which means that if I'd have been going around with him, and he doesn't have a problem introducing himself to people and starting conversations, but I do have a problem getting a word in edgeways when he's around. So I'd have gone round with him, and that had made introductions really, really, really easy. But I'd probably have never got to the point of having a conversation, because I'd have like started talking, and he would have like jumped in and stuff. And he's, you know, he's not being rude, he's just direct. And so I was kind of like really hoping he was going, but at the same time being like, oh, but if he goes, you know, so
Yeah.
So I was kind of glad in the end. But the weird one for me has been like, you know, the lovely little tulips that are next to our names now.
Yeah.
Is the amount of people that I've met in chats since then that were there, and I'm like, oh, you're an awesome person. I would have loved to meet you in real life. But I am going for it for Paris next year.
I think I'm the same. I mean, I know that for me, security's always been the thing of Paris. You know, you might appreciate. I don't know if there is a football team sport. I'm a Liverpool supporter, so I've seen the Paris problems that happened at the Champions League final. That was the only thing that was stopping me, apart from money. So definitely the same. I think Paris TwitchCon is something that I'd love to do as well. In a similar sort of way, Siri just mentioned it. I think you obviously had a situation where you had a safety blanket, but he didn't need one.
Yeah.
When it came to me and Siri, I think we were both each other's safety blankets, because we're very much equals. When it comes
Up
to
for
it,
the Challenge would not have needed me as a safety blanket. That man travels all the world on his own all the time and makes friends. And
So now the full story of actually how we met from my side. So
breaking news.
So I didn't originally go for the Just Chatting meetup.
Right.
I originally went for the Formula One meetup that was about 2 hours before.
Oh.
And
you just stayed there.
Oh,
you got a comfy chair.
Well, this is where it got really weird. So I was talking with a musician who was just interested in finding some Formula One streamers, and her partner is part of a Formula One sort of like fan where they provide merchandise that's real stuff from the races and things like that. And I was talking with them, and this is where it got weird. So at the point that you joined, you know, for the Just Chatting, I switched in my conversation to where I also mentioned that I was autistic, and I was And it was really weird. My brain somehow knew that it had just switched to a just chatting stream, even though I didn't. Like, I still thought I was in a Formula One stream. So this is the funny thing, is that when I first popped up in your chat and you were like, "Oh yeah, this is Kaidi who we met through a just chatting stream." I'm at meetup. I'm like going, "Was it a just chatting?" I just thought it was a Formula One lover that was just going along with the flow.
I know nothing about Formula One. Fast cars, right?
Yeah, fast cars.
The fastest cars in the world.
So yeah, that's the full story of it.
Amazing. Well, I love that. I love the fact that it was a happy accident.
I had been chatting there for about 5 hours basically. So but I'm very much with you in terms of the introductions, because so I went to 3 meetups that day. One of them was the horror meetup as well, and I was very much, that sort of thing that if you don't like introducing yourself, you just like hang around in a random space and just hope that someone says your name or says, "Who are you? What are you doing?" In a weird way, the rude "What are you doing here?" would be fine for me, because I could just about cope with it. And fortunately, it just so happened that in those meetups, there was someone that basically went, "Oh, so what's your name? Yeah, what sort of horror streams do you do?" And then the Formula One, what sort of, and so it sort of helped in that sort of way. And so you go to that situation where, look, they might be very much like you're up for the challenge, where they're fine introducing themselves and asking questions about the other person. But then I was in the mindset of, if they're not, they've just put in a huge effort. So the next person that comes in, I better welcome them in and help them, just in case they're in the same situation as me. And you end up having this sort of community together where I think I think the amount of people that joined that table, and it was like, I think, what was it? It was the fact that the tables originally were single tables and they had to pump them all together because we were just chatting amongst ourselves basically. And it was just, that was what made TwitchCon special, even more than the DJ sets and the noise basically, I think for both of us really, in terms of that. I'm obviously, this is where we went off the rails and just talking about TwitchCon rather than mental health. I sort of want to rewind it back a little bit, because you mentioned about that seminar and the fact that you changed from this nutrition to the mental health. Now, obviously, they mentioned, if the audience is happy with that and everything like that. How did you feel in terms of thinking about how they would react before you'd mentioned it, and how did you feel when you got that reaction of, "Yeah, we're happy with you still doing a mental health seminar"?
So it was mindset and not mental health. So it was all about things like goal setting and like visualizations and all that stuff. So the mental health stuff kind of came almost. That's why my name is Mindset by Dave and not Mental Health by Dave. It's like I never actually intended to be a mental health educator.
No,
I am an accidental mental health educator. And the mindset side of things, I thought, well, you know what, it was supposed to just be, this helps my clients that are already working. I thought it was going to be something that supplemented me as a PT. But ultimately, the reason I actually, weirdly, I didn't feel nervous about it at all, which is unusual, because that's why I brought in that part of the story about that friend saying, "You're going to be a motivational speaker one day," and me saying, "Why would anyone ever listen to me?" That was kind of how I felt about that. Now, what I felt was, what I noticed when I was a personal trainer and when I was training to be a nutritionist, was there's so much information out there. There's everybody. There's everything that needs to be said on it's being said by somebody. It's just getting that information into the right person's hands. Everything to be said about that ever needs to be said about training is basically out there. And then people argue and try and fight over it so that they can appear to be new, because people seem to value new ideas. Like, people seem to value something that's new and novel, even if it's shit compared to what's been there before. It's weird. And the same with nutrition, is that all of the information was out there. It was just very confusing to a lot of people. It's like, who do we listen to? And I was like, I thought, oh, well, what I'm not saying anything new compared to any of the other people that I know, really. Whereas with the mindset stuff, I was like, no one else I know is talking about this. Like, no one. Like, I knew
Mm.
like 4 people that were just. This is like, again, 7 years ago. So like, I knew like a few people that were kind of like just about beginning to talk about it, and I felt like I felt like I'd be saying something fresh to a lot of people. Now, the irony being is that most of the things in mindset coaching, most of the methods that people use, are things that have been around for decades, if not centuries.
Mm.
It's like, mindfulness itself is thousands of years old.
Mm.
Um, Visualizations are not a new thing. Goal setting effectively is not a new thing. Um, like looking after your language so that it's more positive, and it's not a new thing. Now,
No.
so all this stuff's kind of old, but no one that I was around was talking about it. So I actually felt like, you know what, people are going to love this. And there was the weird thing for me. It took me a long ass time to start charging for things. Hence why I said I did 1,000 hours of 1,000 different people. That was for free at 1 hour each. That
Mm.
like that was my how I got my practical hours in. That was how I learned half the stuff that we talk about on streams now,
Mm.
is by putting that time in. But there was a beautiful freeing thing for me, that from the fact that first seminar, no one was paying for that. I thought, well, they're definitely getting their money's worth. And it's like, I thought, well, even if it's shit, it was free. And the same when it came to those that a life a day project, is I thought, well, even if someone just ends up having a chat with somebody, and they've got
Yeah.
someone that just listens for an hour, and even if I don't say anything or offer them anything, it's free. So it's okay. And I went into it all with such a small amount of pressure to perform, that I ended up just feeling free and performing really well.
Mm.
So yeah, that's how I felt going into it, which is weird, because I suppose I still obsess over sort of the paid stuff now. I work for the NHS, which is where the majority of my income comes from. So I feel a little bit more pressure to do to do a really good job with them, which is funny, because they're always like, oh, you're just one of the best speakers we've ever had. Like, they love me, and I hope they
Who
continue to love
doesn't?
me.
Who doesn't?
Well, oh, thanks. My haters, that's who.
Who are they?
But I don't know. I don't listen to them. I block them, and I ignore their comments. But yeah, so yeah, it's I did start. It was once I started charging for stuff, that a little bit more of the imposter syndrome crept in, and there's that whole thing when it comes to mental health care as well, is that people are like, well, it should be free, and it's like, okay, I actually agree. I
Yeah.
totally agree. I think it should be free. I don't that the fact mental health care being free does not mean I think that mental health professionals shouldn't get paid. It's
Mm.
just where that money comes from.
Yes.
I believe governments and corporations should be paying those fees. That's why I actually don't have an issue at all when I go and speak at an insurance company or something like that. I don't have an issue charging them. Like, I don't worry about that. When I'm
Mm.
speaking for a small primary school, a
Yeah.
little bit more like, I'd rather do that as part of my NHS work that I'm already being
Yes.
paid for. Because historically, I would still do those like small primary school ones for free and stuff. But, I need to, like, pay my electricity bill. It's
Yeah.
2022.
Yeah.
And I need to pay my broadband so I can stream. But yeah, so it's yeah, that was how I felt going into that. And the only stuff I've ever had hesitations on, um I don't know. It's the things I've had hesitations on have been like, especially when it's been like, okay, you should probably put my prices up as well.
Yeah.
Like, from time to time, I hate doing that. I have
Oh,
never enjoyed
it is.
that.
Yeah.
And other mindset coaches tell me it's because I've got a poor money mindset, and it's not really. It's because I've got a strong charity mindset. That's my issue.
Yeah.
Is the fact that I would love to live in a world where again, what I was doing was subsidized by not by the people who need it, but by philanthropists or people that think, you know what, I'm a massive big lefty. I believe that, like, um, I believe in social care, I believe in healthcare, I believe in free education, I believe in all of that stuff. So I would like this, what I do, to be it doesn't mean that the professionals in it, if you underpay the professionals that are in it, they're going to do a shit job.
Yeah.
They're going to lose their heart for it, even if they've got the noblest of hearts. So that is a total answer to a question that you didn't ask, but
Yes,
there you go.
it's
What
fine.
I
It's
do all the
fine.
time.
It's how I knew that it helps me, because I'm like going, okay, I do actually now have a question again. So I think you mentioned about sort of like, advice is everywhere, and it has been for a long time. One of the things that I sort of wanted to ask about, and it almost segues eventually into a viewer's question as well, is there are a lot of self-help everywhere, and it's not just in books, but also from
Yeah.
celebrities. Oh, this is what I do during the day, and everything like that. For someone that is actively looking to improve their own mental health, what are pitfalls that you have recognised that not necessarily they should avoid, but the fact of traps that they could be wary of when it comes to advice in terms of improving mental health?
Massive pitfall is the concept of positive vibes only.
Yes.
Like, there's an ironic pitfall right behind me that in that light box. I'm not sure if it's in frame or not, but it says mindset is everything. The light box is a channel point redemption on my stream. And I actually don't believe that mindset is everything, despite the fact that I'm a mindset coach, which is hilarious. The pitfalls are looking for the fix-all, or even the fix in general.
Mm.
And I think this is one of the areas where neurodivergence and mental health, like, so for example, a mental health or a mental health problem, a mental illness, like, a lot, like, there's a lot of kind of, we want a cure and we want a fix, whereas with the neurodivergent community is we don't want a cure or a fix. We don't want to lose.
Yes.
We don't want to not be autistic. We don't want to not be ADHD. It's like, we just want coping strategies of how to live with this. We want a world that is more suited for us. Whereas with mental health, we want a world that's more suited for us, but really, a lot of people would like the magic wand
Yeah.
to fix it. And it's a lot of one of the pitfalls is to kind of is really kind of thinking that magic wand exists.
Mm.
And I fell into that pitfall when I discovered mindset, and actually was one of those bloody zealotry kind of, I was insufferable for a little bit, if I'm honest. I nearly fell into the positive vibes only trap, and thankfully I've got bipolar disorder, and it had other plans for me. But when I first discovered half the techniques that I teach other people to do now, as well as using those techniques on myself, the excitement around sharing those other techniques with people, it made me happy for a very long period of time, like an uncharacteristically long period of time. I didn't have a depressive episode for like a statistically significant period of time. And in my head, I was like, aha, I am fixed now. And I believed it for like a little bit. And then in my head, my depression was like, aha, no, you're not. And I ended up having one of the biggest depressive episodes of my life, was just the emotional hangover of being up for so long and being good for so long. And the thing is, when you think of like happiness and being positive 100% of the time, if that is what if good mental health equals, then no one has good mental health. Like, no one on the planet. Like, not because it's an unrealistic standard.
Yeah.
And looking for that unrealistic standard, not giving space for the wild variety of other emotions that exist in this world, that it's pushing it under the rug. It's a problem waiting to happen.
Yeah.
and I think that's one of the traps that a lot of people fall into. And I think I fell into a lot of these traps. Like I don't mind acknowledging my mistakes, or not even mistakes. I did the best I could at the time I could, with the information that I had and the
Yeah.
experience I had. And that's one of the hardest parts as well of trying to kind of pass this on to other people, is the fact that I don't want people to learn by making mistakes. I want people, like, learning by your own. Everyone will learn by mistakes, right? The real trick to life is learning by someone else's mistakes, because then you don't have to make the mistake yourself. But none of us do that,
No.
because we don't we don't feel the repercussions or the ramifications of other people's mistakes. Therefore, we think we're going to be all right. We think it's all going to be fine. And if, like, and so that's another issue, is the fact that a lot of people get into it, and once they get into it, like, they become, I call it, like, the preachy ex-smoker, the person who, like, smoked, like, for 20 years, and then they
Yeah.
stop smoking one day, and then they tell everybody else that they've got to stop smoking. um People who go on personal journeys, um they want to take everyone else along for the ride. And uh sometimes as well, is that you end up, like, losing that focus on yourself. But also, it's I think it's for valiant reasons that people want to take other people along for the ride. My life is suddenly better. Why wouldn't I want other people to
Mm.
experience this too? If anything, it'd be weird to not want to take other people along for that ride.
Yeah.
But yeah, it ends up being this thing that, in order to for your own self healing, you have to focus on yourself and be self first, not selfish. And then, if your outcome comes, if someone else is not ready to make those changes themselves yet, because we all have to make these changes at our own time, and some of us don't, and some of them, those changes aren't right for everybody. And I suppose that leads into probably the other big pitfall, is thinking that this worked for me, therefore it will work for everybody. The one size fits all, the ableist approach, the fact that you one day did work a bit harder and it worked out for you, so you go and tell everybody else that they've got to work a little bit harder, and you forget to validate their emotions first, and just all the rest of it. There's a lot. I could probably talk for about an hour just on the pitfalls, but those are the kind of key ones. Is thinking there's a one size fits all, forgetting to put, like, once you've got yourself to, like, a certain step, forgetting to put yourself first, and just thinking, yeah, I've got this now, I'm going to cruise forever. And the biggie being expecting to be happy 100% of the time,
Mm.
because if that is your barometer for success, then all it takes is one day of sadness and you failed.
Yeah. I think in terms of that thing of thinking that you fix, and then trying to fix other people, and then you forget yourself again. It's almost
Yeah.
that mindset is mindset. Yay, we said it.
Hey, I own that word. I
Is
also own the color purple.
it's wrong if you're thinking in terms of fixing. I always remember, so my mum, one of the things she does as well as her job is she does volunteer work elsewhere, and she had this sort of burnout and everything like that. And I always remember that someone sort of like gave her a bit of counsel, basically went, it's not about fixing yourself and then fixing other people. If you
Yeah,
want to go and help other people out, you need to first make sure that you're topped up yourself. In the
yeah,
same way that, you know, before before you, if you were to make physical car journeys to go to that person, you would first make sure that your car is appropriately topped up with fuel so it doesn't burn out before you get there. And in a similar sort of way, you need to be making sure constantly, because refueling yourself isn't as expensive as filling up your car at all.
yeah,
Refilling yourself, make sure that you can help that other person without causing pain to yourself. And it was something that it's really ironic that you mentioned about the fact that you don't learn from other people's mistakes.
yeah.
That was my mum's mistake, and I don't want to, because that was something that she learnt, and I freaking heard that help and that advice while I was in the same room, and I still don't apply it because it wasn't me.
Yeah.
It's
Yep.
that
Yep.
sort of hilarious thing. Now I've said it, obviously it's now going to get played and clipped, and someone's going to play it in my face, so that I always get reminded of it. But
Which that's what they should do.
but I do like it. If you go through that thinking, because I can't say mindset because I have to pay Dave. If you go through that thinking of I need to refuel myself rather than I need to fix myself, then you are doing that thing of self first. Because at the end of the day, if you do put yourself first, then you're in a better position to help others.
Yeah.
Um,
100%.
so that was the pitfalls. I know that there was a question that came in from Syria, and it's interesting because we've just basically said nothing fixes all, and yet you're being given the challenge to try and give something that fixes all. So, so the question is: are there any good life hacks for people with executive dysfunction?
Yeah. I saw that question come in a while back, and I've kind of been I like let a little sense of my brain work away on it in the background. The thing I found with that is that this is one of those areas where you probably do crave new tools. And the new tools, so I've there's been so many tools that I've used to help with my executive dysfunction over the years, and every single time without fail, and if this is the case too, I think the pair of you will probably be like, oh my god, this is relatable. Every single time I get one of these new tools, I'm like, oh my god, this revolutionizes my life. How did I ever survive without it? This is it now. I found the answer. And then the tool loses its novelty and you forget to use the tool. So you need something to remind you to use the tool. And then, okay, you go back to the tool and you're like, oh, I can't believe I stopped using this. Like, I can't believe I stopped using notepads, or I can't believe I stopped using Trello or whatever. I can't believe I stopped using like organization tools online, journaling, whatever it might be. And actually, the one thing I found is it's okay to it's okay to goal hop with that. If that is the case, to look for a new tool or to look for a novel idea on how to do it, and it's okay if that works for you once or twice, and then you need something else, because it's a little bit like that whole neurodivergent thing, which of a lot of neurodivergence is a jack of all trades, right? And we're told, oh, a jack of all trades is a master of none, which is half of the expression. The full expression is a jack of all trades is a master of none, but often greater than a master of one. So it's like people who goal hop or hobby hop and like do all of that. We as neurodiverse people tend to go a little bit all in. You might call it obsessed, but we have a tendency to go a little bit all in, learn something like really, really quickly, and okay, we might drop it a little bit later. But if anybody ever needed us to bring that skill out of the bag, we'd be like, "Yep, I can still do that." So yeah, utilize if like it's finding those tools that work for you. The biggest one that works for me is a combination of deadlines and external pressure. So if I say to someone, when like with ourselves in this meeting, which I was an hour late for, but like I said to you, you were like, oh, can I get this done? What the first thing I came back to you was like, well, yeah, when do you have a time? Do you have a time frame on this? And that's what I will go back to people and ask them as soon as they ask me to do something, because I actually need that deadline and I need that, and I that then kind of gives me a idea on how to get prepared for it. So external accountability. If you want to do something, um, like then tell a friend that's going to check up on you. Tell a friend that's going to like see how you're getting on with it. Like, tell your audience. I know Siri is a streamer as well, so tell your audience and tell them, look, if I've not done this, so like it's weird that the things I can do versus the things that cause my executive dysfunction to go off the rails is weird. Like, it's like some days I can get through. People will look at what I do and go, "How'd you get through all of that when you're neurodivergent?" I'm like, "What? That's easy." But you want me to call the electrician? It's like, no. Like, or you want me to make a doctor's appointment? It's like, no. So I crowdsource. I make my community. If I've got something that I really need to get done and I know that the executive dysfunction is going to kick in hard, I lean on my community for that. I'm like, look, I want you to basically cancel me If if I haven't phoned the electrician, this literally I used this like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
I was like, if I haven't phoned the electrician and ironed my shirts by the end of today, I want you to cancel me. I want you to stop following me because and that little bit of extra pressure really helps. But yeah, deadlines are a massive one. If something's too far in the future, I'm not going to start working on it anytime soon.
And
And every single time I tell myself, "Oh, that was stressful doing all that work last minute. Next time I'm going to start sooner." Yeah, been saying that for 40 years, haven't I? Can't probably be saying it for another 40, but at least now I can't imagine it's ever going to change. But I also didn't know I was neurodivergent for a lot of that time, so
yeah.
it's,
One of my
it's
mods
my
Oh,
has just
sticking to it.
yeah, one of my mods has just redeemed a hydrate, so me and Dave will, but everyone else will as well.
I'm like, I've only got this much left now.
Ooh. But that thing of the external pressure, I mean, it's interesting. And this is the thing with neurodivergence. I'll probably say something that actually you go, well, I don't do it to that extent. Sometimes even just subtly, even though none of the audience actually says it. Sometimes you mentioning it is enough for you to remind yourself. I mean, for myself, I actually had been sort of. I do this always when it comes to my streams. Is that I almost verbalize my schedule out on what I'm
Yeah,
going to do. So on the last Tuesday, I'd basically gone right. I'm doing this stream on Thursday. I'm doing this information stream where I'm going to be talking about this, and then um, Dave, I'm doing the interview with Dave on Monday. And
yeah,
what was good was that and maybe it was good, maybe it wasn't. I don't know, but it ended up where even when I was like, right, I'm not quite switched on for stream, which I think was on the Friday. Yes, on the Friday. I still went, right, even though I'm not switched on for streaming, I have verbalized those promises. I can do this. I can,
yeah,
and it's weird. You end up psyching yourself up still, ready. Like I can still do this stream. I can still do this stream, and
yeah,
you end up. It's weird. It's almost like you fire up your functions so that you're not dysfunctioning. So even though
yeah,
no one's in the chat, no one's told you anything, you're still doing it. And maybe that doesn't work for everyone. I don't. Syria just mentioned about she gets pestered to eat, so she probably needs the chat. So it's a good job she does have chatters. And no, I'm joking. But for myself, even if I haven't had the chat, I still go. I still told even those people that are watching my VODs 3 hours later, I've still told them that I'm going to be doing this. I better
yeah,
fricking do this now.
yeah.
It's and it's interesting. You end up being your worst nagger, but your best nagger at the same time.
Yeah, yeah. It's the most bizarre thing in the world because um snap out of it is a tremendously ableist term. It's a horrible term, apart from the fact that certain things do snap us out of things. And there are certain like I can't my executive function there, and I cannot get this work done. And then conveniently, an hour before my deadline, my executive function snaps out of it because it has no choice but to. Like then there's consequences now if my exec like no, and it's the same. Like I've worked with I've got friends that with OCD, two of them in particular that have got contamination OCD that both went to do volunteer work in like third world countries, and when they got there, hated it for about a day, and then their OCD was just like, well, I suppose there's contamination everywhere. I've just got to get on with it. And it was like getting the messages I got were amazing, and it was like it's like, oh yeah, the OCD's gone quiet. I'm not worried about the contamination, even though I'm surrounded by more contamination than I am at home. And it's like, hopefully it'd be greater when I get home and the OCD is quiet, and then as soon as they're back in the familiar controlled environment, the the OCD was back there, and that they snapped back into it. And the only issue with this is that, like how there's a great, Lobau Spark. You need to speak to him at some point. Actually, he's got this great sort of philosophy around ADHD and around neurodivergence, which is, we've often heard the whole it's a superpower, and we know that that's like, it would be a superpower if we could choose when it did its thing.
Mm.
It's like, if we could choose when to use those powers and choose to not use those powers sometimes, rather than those powers picking and choosing when they
Yeah, a bit
when
like a bit like Superman if he was like just doing his household chores and he accidentally threw a can of soup through the wall rather than
Yeah, like, or he's out flying and his superpower suddenly stops working. It's like, and but it's like, but he says, I don't think that ADHD is a superpower, or I don't think autism is a superpower. I believe that people like that autistic people are superheroes. That people with ADHD are superheroes. And it's similar to what I think about mental health. People with mental health being warriors. It's like, having a mental illness is certainly not something that anyone would want,
Mm.
but the people that have those are warriors. So yeah, I've lost my train of thought, which is amazing that this is the first time I've done that in the whole time, because normally I do that a lot of times.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So I mean,
I think I started reading serious comments, and then I was like, what was I saying?
it's one of the. Do you know what? I'm exactly the same. And sometimes I've done racing games, and I see like a big segment coming in, and I'm like going, I need to read this. I need to read this. Forget to pause the game and crash into a wall whilst I'm looking down and reading a chat. And I'm like,
That's
okay,
why I don't game and chat,
yeah.
because I kept on. I can't multitask. Well, none of us can, but
No,
I really can't.
I can multitask. I can hate myself and start streaming at the same time. It's easy.
Oh, there you go.
um, one of the
Pure
things,
talent.
pure talent, absolutely. One of the things that I did want to mention, because one of the things that's quite special about the community that I have, the core community, is that pretty much 95% of us are either streamers or mods on channels, whether it's this one or others, or both, and are also a community that very much care for the responsibility behind it as well, both as a mod and as a streamer. And so what can end up happening is that if you end up in a situation where you need to take a break from Twitch, you end up feeling hyper responsible and feeling like you've either let your streamer down or you've let the community down or anything like that. Do you have any sort of recommendations to the streamers, to the mods, on things that you can think about to help you focus on, to help them basically be self first, community and streamer second?
Yes. Okay. So two things I would say on that. Number one is very similar to what you said to me at the very beginning when I was being deeply apologetic. Is you were like, yeah, okay, how would you feel if someone did this to you? And I'm like, I totally understand. I understand that life gets in the way, things that happen. And that was by the way, thank you for saying that, because that was just the absolute perfect thing to say to me at that point. And that's the whole thing. Is so I quite often I've got myself into the habit now of saying something along those lines. What would I say to everybody else? So I get brain fog sometimes. You've seen my streams; we're intense with chat. Like I don't break. I don't pause. It's full go. I get 45 minutes, if not more, behind on chat, and I am trying my best to catch up for for the rest of that stream. And that takes a lot. And eventually, at some point in that stream, I'm suddenly going to stop being able to read chat and to form sentences in my brain and to make sense. And I used to berate myself about that. But I'm like, you know what? This is okay. What would I say to anybody else? And this is the beauty about when you are in a position of being, this isn't as disgusting a phrase as influencer, but when you are in the position of being a motivational speaker, which I don't consider myself to be either. I consider an educator. I'm happy with that.
Celebrities don't ever consider themselves as motivational speakers, so.
And but once you're in that position, is the beauty of I love about my job is that if you tell people enough about like that their value is not related to their mental health, or that they don't need to turn up to every stream, or that that like you don't, no one's required to be there any or like any stream, even core members of your community, they're not required to be there any stream. Your mods aren't required to be there any stream. They're like friends that are doing stuff for free for you. It's like,
Mm.
and if I tell that to enough people, I eventually believe it myself. And I have to not. I can't do hypocrisy. It's like that's what I've got. I've got like justice sensitivity as part of my neurodivergence and all of that stuff. It's like hypocrisy doesn't sit well with me. And one day I did realize that if I didn't do the things that I tell other people to do, that makes me a hypocrite, and that didn't sit well. So yeah, sometimes I need reminding of that. Sometimes I need, and I think so. I think that's the best thing is reminding people of that. Is reminding them, okay, what would, if you can't be in someone's stream today, that's okay. What would you say if they couldn't be in your stream today? It's like, what would you say if they didn't come to your stream for 6 months? Like
Mm.
then, and then on the seventh month they turned up. You'd be just great to like, it's happy to see them. None of us are owed anything by each other. None of like that, like so. And the same when it comes to if you have to take time off from your community, is you'd want any of your community to be able to take that time off. That self-care is important for them.
Mm.
um you'd encourage them, to be self first. You'd encourage them to look after their own mental health first. You'd encourage them to fill their cup up before they pour into others. So remind yourself of that too, that it's important. And here's the thing, that if you want to give yourself to other people, you'll probably really be good at that at first, and you'll probably love it because it feels good to help other people. It just does. It's like that whole joke in Friends that
Mm.
there's no such thing as a selfless act, because helping other people feels good. Other people wanting your help feels good when like 3 people want it. When like 100 people want your help, it's not so good by that point, because you can't give your spoons to everybody.
Mm.
And it's not that, but instead of feeling wanted, you feel overwhelmed. um Now, the thing is that, you need to kind of, you do need to set boundaries. And if you've got a growing community, those boundaries are going to evolve and change over time, and that's okay. But the thing is, if you're the type of person that likes to give 100% to your relationships and to your friendships, it's like, if you've got one friend and you give them 100%, that's cool. You know, you give 2 friends, you can't give them both 100%. You end up giving them 50-50. Um, you have 100 people in your community. That's
Mm.
1% each. Now the thing is, you might be giving if you've got like 16 hours in the day that you give to other people, you might be given that quantity of time, but over time the quality of that time will begin to disappear. One day you'll wake up and you're just like, don't feel like myself anymore. I just I
Mm.
don't feel like I feel burnt out. I don't feel like I can do this. When's my turn? When's someone going to come help me, etc.? And you'll still try to give all your time to other people. And it's like you've got to multiply the quantity by the quality. If you're giving the absolute dregs of your energy to 50 people, then like you'd probably be better off giving like taking some time back for you and putting yourself first. If you take an hour back of that time once a day, which would be a huge amount for anyone to take back, is an hour a day, and you put your own needs first, you'll find that that's why I constantly go on about it being self first and not selfish. You will
Mm.
find that you are a better version of you. I am a better streamer when my needs are met. I am a better dad when my needs are met. Better
Mm.
husband, better friend. I am a better everything when my needs are met. That's why I start my day with going to the gym. It's like my need comes first there, and then everyone gets a better version of me. When I was first a personal trainer, I was trying to fit every client in under the sun, and the easiest way to do that was to kick my own workouts out of the diary and train an
Mm.
extra client or two in the time that I would have normally trained myself. And I felt great and virtuous doing that for about 3 weeks, until suddenly one of my big forms of self care was gone. If
Mm.
that, and that's the gym, that's for me, that works for me. For some people, that's watching a video in the morning, watching some, listening to some music in the morning, reading. Doesn't even necessarily need to be in the morning either. It just needs to be somewhere. There's a great expression I once heard that if you don't have time to take 5 minutes for yourself, then you probably need an hour.
Yeah.
and that's the thing, is that so when you go back to it, you may be giving 1 hour less every single day, but those other 15 hours that you're doing that day, the quality is going to go through the roof. And instead of giving 16 hours at 5% of your capacity, you give them 15 hours at 80% of your capacity. I can't be bothered doing the maths right now, but it's a lot more.
No, I get that. Yeah, of course. It's way too late for
I
both
haven't got
of
a
us.
calculator.
No, it's fine. No, I really get that. So when I took a couple of days off last week, I very much was like, oh, it's a day off and I can stream for 12 hours because, I was going to be working for 8 hours and going to be streaming for 4, so 8 plus 4, 12, perfect.
Yep.
And yet it was interesting. I burnt out after 10 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember looking back and going, why? Absolutely why? And I completely forgot. And I mentioned this when I was in your chat when we were doing the question of what do you do differently to other people. Is
Your mask
I
off time.
mask off time,
Yeah.
where I basically went, freaking out. My journey to work, which is about an hour and a half, and my journey back, which is an hour and a half because I take public transport and it's shit. I have headphones to myself. I sit at the back of the bus, and there's a reason I sit at the back of the bus is because as well as having the music on, I also mime the words full blast as if I was singing it. Absolutely rock it out.
Love it.
Full on, right? Because that is my time to be myself, express myself the way I am. I've just had a day off, and I've not done shit of that
Yeah.
the entire day. I've just done 10 hours of giving to other people, giving to other people, giving to other people, and not having anything for myself. I probably still could do a 12-hour stream if I had an hour and a half break in the middle, which can't happen on Twitch because it doesn't count on their systems. If I had that hour and a half of mask off time, because at the end of the day, is whether, and this is the thing when it comes to neurodivergence, is we have different masks.
Yeah.
We have a work mask, we have a presenter mask which we use for our streams. We have a no mask and no filter for our time by ourselves. Some of us even have family masks of the way in which we are in front of our parents, where we just or other family members, because we know as much as they do care for us and they do tolerate us and the way in which we are, we still have to be a certain part of ourselves so that they're not too freaked out and they're not putting too much work on.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I had an entire day where I was wearing a mask. It's exhausting, and so it was really interesting, that sort of, I need to find a way in which, if I wanted to do a 12-hour stream, I need to find a way in which I could at least have a mask off time to myself.
You know what I think you should do with that? Let us all see your mask off time, and I think people will love it. I think I said this to you on Friday. I was just like, I want to see that. Like, it's the dance while no one's watching, whilst everyone's watching. So,
The problem, I don't think I've got a setup yet that allows me to do that. That's the problem more than anything else.
Fair enough. But yeah, honestly, that makes a lot of sense to me, because when I used to work in the gym, I sort of hated my commute because it was half an hour, and that's whatever. It's an extra half an hour you're out. It's an extra hour you're out the day. So for you having an extra 3 hours, I'd probably, whilst in it, hate that now. And then I didn't. It took me a little bit of time to realize it once it stopped happening, because when I started working from home fully, my wife also started working from home fully. So we'd gone from I'd drive home from the gym for half an hour, and sometimes she'd still be in work, so she wouldn't get back home for another 2 hours or whatever. Or in the worst case scenarios, I'd drive home from the gym and she'd already be at home. And I say worst case scenarios as if I don't want to see my wife. It sounds terrible, but what I mean is that I then went from working intensely with clients all day, one-to-one, and one-to-one work. I think one-to-one work and streaming have actually got a lot in common, in the fact that you don't get to switch off. Like, and this is when people say, "Oh, why streaming's not difficult?" And it's like, yes, it is. You don't get to switch off, and people don't get it. If someone's working in the office, someone is in an office 7 hours a day. They're not working for those full 7 hours 100% of the time. You can daydream for a few seconds and get away with it. Unless you've got a bloody helicopter boss that's like circling around you 100% of the time, you can walk off to the water cooler and like have a quick drink, or you go for a pee, or people go for a smoke break or whatever, and they have that moments to themselves. Whereas when you're one-to-one with a client, if you do that, that person notices, and then they think that you're not giving them your full attention. And I think, and it's like, and so I used to just do back-to-back clients because I don't like breaking in momentum for me. So like if I have like a 10-minute break between two clients, that's worse for me than having no break whatsoever. And basically, like that, so I would work intensely with doing that, and that 30 minutes in the car for me was a little transition time for my brain to get out of work mode and into home mode. Whereas once it's like came here, home mode is the other side of that door that's right there. Sometimes my kids walk into this room while I'm streaming, mostly the youngest one, and it's like, and if she, and that was one of the big changes for me of coming to this, was of coming and working from home. And especially now when I finish a Tuesday stream, I generally have like half an hour to myself before I speak to anybody else. On a Thursday stream, I have to go directly for the school run. So I have to, and then on a Friday stream, I basically finish and have lunch with my wife. And for me, that not having that transition of even just a breather to myself, nobody else wanting my attention, nobody, like, not having to think, respond, answer questions, anything like that, is it's necessary, but it's not always possible. So yeah, it does make a huge difference. I am going to have to go to bed very shortly.
No, that's fine.
I'm absolutely loving chatting as well.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I'm like, come on, realistically, how long can I do this?
Well, yeah, I get that. Well, this is the thing. Let's give you the opportunity eventually to be able to talk to the community should they be able to pop into yourself. You sort of did a little promo for yourself on the Tuesday, Thursday, and the Friday streams, but could you
That
sort
wasn't
of
even intentionally
no.
supposed to be self-promo. That I apologize.
It's okay. It's okay. Could you like sort of elaborate a bit more on what you do on those streams, how
Yes.
it's all going, how things go?
Okay. There's each stream is a different stream in the fact that we have, well, the Tuesday stream, the Thursday stream, and the Friday stream are a slightly different style. It's all underpinned with mental health peer support, which is what my job is. My job is mental health education, and my job is mental health peer support. So peer support is basically you are being supported in a space, not by a therapist, but by someone who has personally been through a lot of mental health issues themselves. So it talks about things from a lived experience and an empathetic point of view, rather from an educated point of view. I am educated in mental health as well.
A thirst trap with it, yeah.
So you get a little bit of both with me, which is kind of nice. So all three streams have that in them. What makes the three streams different is Tuesday stream is what's called emotional sandwich.
Be honest, how many of you clip
which is you have an hour of peer support followed by a podcast guest, followed by another hour or maybe even two of peer support. That's the bread, is the peer support. The toppings is the guest, and the butter that holds it all together is me.
Oh my god!
That was my chat being filthy.
Are you sure? Are you sure you're the butter and not the cheese? But
no, well, I didn't write that line. I just roll with it because I'm thirsty but worthy. So that's Tuesdays. Thursdays, what's called Fill Your Cup Thursday. I am not all about toxic positivity at all. I'm not about positive vibes only. I'm about what we call appropriate vibes only. Appropriate vibes only means you feel whatever you need to feel. If you're sad, you feel sadness. If you're in grief, you feel that grief. If you're angry, that angry is deserved, then you feel that anger. But on a Thursday, we do try to more towards the side of positivity. It is the idea of actually giving people a little bit of a boost up, a little bit of a pep talk, a little bit of like maybe a little bit of meditation here and there, a bit of visualization, and just basically try and help them fill their cups. Like, and I fill my cup. We fill our cups literally with coffee or tea or whatever, and we fill our cups metaphorically with energy. So the both of them are at 1 p.m. on the Tuesday and the Thursday. And the one that's a little bit different is on the Friday. We do a 9 a.m. show. And the 9 a.m. show is basically for our morning people. But the Friday show was supposed to be called World to Rights, where we were going to basically have a topic and put the world to rights. My community renamed it Story Time. And on a Friday morning, we have Discord voice chat open so that we have a questioner stream. The question stream last week, for example, was, what would you do differently if no one was watching? Or no, what would you do?
What do you do differently to other people?
If
yeah,
you
most
couldn't
people.
be judged.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Oh, yeah. What do you do differently to most people? The one the week before was, what would you do differently
Yes.
if no one could judge you? All times mentioned are British summertime /GMT. Yes. And basically, yeah, so people come on stream on voice chat and answer whatever the question of the stream is, and we have discussion off there. And yeah, that's what we do. And that's so yeah, 1 p.m. Tuesday and Thursday, 9 a.m. Friday. Tomorrow we have an amazing guest called Josh Connolly on. So I'll be doing the emotional support side of things from 1 p.m. At 2 p.m. Josh Connolly is a man who basically, his thing is about rewriting resilience. What does resilience mean? And resilience not meaning you man it up and you tough it up and you get through it. Resilience meaning you use the full spectrum of your emotions and you allow and accept them. And by having emotional vulnerability, we find strength. So we're going to be talking about that tomorrow. And then all of those things end up eventually, well, not all of them, because I'd never get around to doing all of them, because, like, I did 36 in 2 days once. But most of my podcast episodes end up on YouTube or on a podcast app as well, which is called the Mindset by Dave podcast.
I might be looking out for mine.
Yours is going up. It's somewhere in the queue. There's honestly, if it was done chronologically, yours would be about 42nd in the queue right now. But I'm actually, yours is probably more like 4th or 5th in the queue. So because I'm not releasing all the ones from, I literally did 36 podcast episodes in 36 hours, like one episode an hour for 36 hours in June. Yeah, June. And so I've got 34 of them still to release. Exactly. So yeah, that's a lot, and that just makes me feel overwhelmed thinking about it. So what I try to do with that is I think, what topic haven't we had for a little while? So we've not had autism since Pingu Kevin was on. So yes, so that we are definitely due an autism talk. Not that I'm personally not averse at all to having multiple autism talks in a row. But apparently audiences are, because audiences like funnily enough, if you're releasing a podcast to try and reduce the stigma of mental health, you have to accept that your audience probably has a little bit of stigma.
So to help your executive dysfunction, I know you mentioned on 4th in the queue. Do we have a time frame?
4th-ish.
Top 4th-ish. Do we have a time frame of when it'll be out?
So if I get more work done this week before I go away, it might come out whilst I'm away.
Okay.
Which I want. I would like to have 3 more podcasts edited this week and then scheduled for one for later this week. Because Valens, because we've not had sex education on the podcast in like 3 years. So Valens went out early. That was so Valen jumped the queue quite heavily, and his went out yesterday. So I want to get 1 more this week and then 1 a week for the 2 weeks I'm away. And ideally maybe even the 1 already scheduled for the 1 after. So I hope it's in the next 4 weeks.
Okay.
But I'm not even willing to commit that to you, because I don't know if that's possible. If it was, because I've got 3 of the, I've got the heaviest. When you said you're off work this week, and I was like, oh, that would have been so good to do one in the daytime. And I have the heaviest week of work of the year so far this week, because I've got 2 days with the NHS instead of 1.
Yeah.
Everything else that I need to do, and I leave on Friday morning. So there's no stream this Friday, obviously. But all of my Friday work has been pushed up into tomorrow morning and Thursday morning.
But that's the type of work you love, isn't it? All rushed and all altogether, isn't it?
Yeah, I like doing like one day of that. I don't like doing 4. No, I'll be fine. I'll be fine. It's the editing work outside of that.
Yeah.
Like that, I've got to do my must do's before I get to do my optionals, and the podcast is unfortunately an
That's
optional.
okay.
But yeah, it's coming soon. You are further up the list than, as I say, you would be if it was chronologically. Otherwise, it'd be February or something.
No, that's absolutely fine. I think it's just been really, it's been an absolute honour, firstly, to be able to come onto your stream as someone being interviewed, and also appearing in the chat as well. Obviously, the support I've had on your chats as well has been amazing. And to have this opportunity to do an Uno reverse, I know you probably wouldn't do it for everybody, because everyone's got, not because you're an egomaniac or anything like that, but more just down, you are, okay, but more down to the fact that you are restricted in terms of the amount of time that you can spend on things like this. So to have the opportunity to interview you is such a special feeling, even if you are an hour late.
Yeah, I deserve that. But no, it's been the pleasure's been all mine. It's been absolutely wonderful, and I am glad that because I think I may have told you this when you were on mine, that I almost, because the previous day's meetup of the podcasters one was rushed, and and we never, even though I did meet Valen through that, and we ended up connecting quite well, but it was everyone ran off to the drag show after like half an hour, and it was rushed, and I didn't really get to chat to anybody, but I took names and I followed up, which but part of my brain was like, on the Sunday I was like, I don't think I'll go to this thing, because I could just like leave in the afternoon, and I was exhausted from it all and stuff, and I'm so glad I stuck around. And I went on, I was speaking to my wife that night, and it was like, that was the highlight of the weekend to me, was that chat, followed by the consecutive chat that we carried on having at the bar down the road. That was the whole purpose of why I went, not specifically to meet you, because I didn't know of your existence before that, but to meet cool people, and you fell very nicely into that category of a cool person to meet. So
I'm unfollowing you. Didn't know of my existence before TwitchCon. How shocking!
You didn't know of mine before then. And as you've said a few times, I'm kind of a big deal, yeah.
We both are.
Oh, absolutely.
You're basically looking at Chris Pattinson and Robert De Niro, maybe. No.
Which one's which?
Which one do you think is the sexy one?
Oh, that's a loaded question. Because De Niro's the older one and I'm the older one, you probably mean I'm De Niro.
I didn't want to mention the fact that when you first had your diagnosis of bipolar, I was 3 years old, but
All right. I feel like if I'd have gone to a doctor at 3 years old, I'd probably have got my diagnosis then.
It was absolutely awesome catching up with you again and getting you the opportunity to have the spotlight on you in an interview rather than the other way around. And
yeah, it's been fun.
Absolutely amazing. So thanks very much for that, Dave.
My absolute pleasure. And speaking of the spotlight, I think I'll finally turn this one off because it's far too bright in here. But yeah, it's been a pleasure, and I'll catch you. I'll catch you later in the week, I'm sure.
No
Thanks
worries.
for having me on.
Take care, Dave.
Thanks, everyone.